9-6 is multiplying integers, and after doing all the addition subtraction stuff last few days, some of you are going to like this section way more, find a nice breath of fresh air. All right, multiplying integers. So integers, again, numbers without decimals, so not doing anything with decimals or, yeah. All right, determine the product. Really what we're doing is multiplying numbers with positives and negatives. That's really what the section is talking about. So if you have a positive number times a positive, like 5 times 5. 5 times 5, you've known for years, it's 25. And it's a positive 25. So if you have a positive times a positive, it just gives you a positive. 2 times negative 3. Well, you punch that into a calculator, use your brain, that gives you a negative 6. So in other words, if I have a positive times a negative, I'll get the same answer as a negative times a positive, because you can change the order when you're multiplying and not change your answer. And that'll always give a negative answer. So if you have one negative in the problem, because here I have one negative, it's going to give you a negative answer. But if you have two negatives, a negative number times a negative number, those negatives actually cancel out and become positive. So a negative times a negative is a positive, and negative 4 times negative 6, the two negatives cancel. And 4 times 6 is 24, so we just would get a positive 24. We should make sure we don't write the answer like that, because putting a positive, putting a plus sign there is not simplified. We're all about simplifying our answers. So steps, what I'd recommend doing, and we kind of did it over here on the side, if you go back and think about it, is look at these and first figure out, is it positive or is it negative? If it's negative, put the negative sign in. If it's positive, just kind of leave it without a sign there, without a negative. And then second step, multiply the numbers to get the product, is the official, what they call it in math class. So product, that we have a factor times a factor gives us a product. So you could take up something and find the greatest common factor if you have a couple of them. And in algebra, you'll do a bunch of factoring. And anywho. And then third, put the correct sign with the product. I kind of actually do this up here. I figure out what's the sign and then put in a negative if it's there. But make sure your sign's correct before you're done and move on. All right, few examples, but really there's not much in the notes today. If we have, maybe leave that top key still available. So 12 times 5. So we have a positive times a positive, which means our answer is going to be positive. So we don't write that in. We just kind of remember that it's going to be a positive. 12 times 5, you could, if you're not sure, you could go back and rock it old school like that. Honestly, to do it in my head, I look at it this way. I look at it, the 12, as though that is a 10 plus 2. Because it's a little harder to do 12 times 5 than to do these. If I take my 10 and multiply by 5, that's going to give me a 50. If I take my 2 and multiply by 5, that gives me a 10. And then I could just add those together to get a 60. So either way, you could do that, or you could multiply it the old-fashioned way. Do 2 times 5 times 2 is 10. Carry the 1. 5 times 1 is 5. Plus 1 is 60. But be able to get the answer in your head is nice, but without a calculator either way. All right, let's do the next one. I'm getting bogged down. Negative 6 times 8. So we have one negative, so that's just going to give me a negative answer. And 6 times 8 is 48. So final answer, negative 48. And then last but not least, we have a negative times a negative. Negative 7 times negative 2. And sometimes they'll put parentheses in like that just to kind of show that it's not a minus, to help emphasize that it's multiplication. But a negative times a negative gives me a positive. I don't write in a plus, I just don't have a negative sign. 7 times 2 is 14. So final answer, positive 14. If you're struggling with this, hunt me down in class. Let's talk about it and get you all caught up to speed. But that is it for the section. Really, that's the only skill. Have a good one.